My average went from 0.04 miles to 0.54 miles in the first few days during the intervention phase. I exceeded my goals towards the end as I was getting tired of running. I stopped being an overachiever and I just stopped at my goals. I met my goals 18 out of 24 days, which is 75% of opportunities. There were some days during my intervention phase that I was really sick with the flu and I did not run, and other days that my town was actually hit by an ice storm and I couldn't really bear the cold, so I did not achieve my goals during those days. My running behavior on the graph, though, does show that goal setting and feedback had an impact and was effective. The graph also demonstrates that there was a clear functional relationship between my independent and dependent variables.
My name is Liz, and I was participant 2 as the second person to begin the intervention phase. I did all of my running on a stationary treadmill at a gym. The treadmill recorded the distance I ran, so I would transfer that information to the Map My Walk app. For the intervention, I increased my daily goal by 0.5 miles. At the beginning of this replication study, I was not a runner, so I did not want to make my daily goals that were unattainable. If I did not meet my daily goal, the next time I ran, I would work towards the same goal until I met it. I met my running goal 16 out of 22 days, which is 73%. Although there's an overall increase in my running distance, my results are variable because there were several occasions that I did not run at all. On all the days when I did not meet my goal, it was because I did not run. My long-term running goal was to run 1 mile, which I met on the last day of intervention. Overall, my experience with running was not as bad as I thought it would be. I've never been a runner, so I thought it would be really difficult. But setting small attainable goals each day made it easier to work up to my long-term goal, and I found that it was motivating to receive encouragement from those around me.
So this is Bree, and I was participant number 3. As you can see through my graph, I had a really low distance baseline, and my data was stable during that portion of the study, with distances from 0 to 0.2 of a mile. And I had an average distance during baseline of only 0.02 of a mile. Once the treatment was implemented, though, you can see here that I have an increasing trend line in my data, but my data was still variable as I did not meet my goals consistently. Since I was not much of a runner before the study, I decided to set my daily goals to increase by only 0.1 of a mile each day. My first day of treatment began at only 0.1 of a mile, and then I increased my goals by 0.1 thereafter, as long as I had met the previous goal. I met my goal only 7 out of the 18 days of my intervention phase, which is 38%, and my long-term distance goal was to reach 2 miles. I had a distance range during intervention phase from 0 to 2 miles and an average distance of a half mile. There were a few days where I was sick and didn't run at all, and also a few days where I forgot my daily goal and ended up running a little shorter distance than the goal that I had set for myself. Regardless of this, a change in my behavior was visible, with the beginning of treatment distance being only 0.1 of a mile and my distance on the final day of data collection for treatment being at 2 miles. The data collected in graph displays that the intervention of setting goals and receiving peer feedback on a regular basis was effective because my distance ran increased over time.
My name is Jasmine, and I was participant number 4. As you can see in my graph, I also had very low distance during my baseline, including some days where I did not run at all, with the highest amount during this period being not above 0.5 miles. On average, my baseline data was 0.04 miles, with a data range of 0 to 0.28 miles as well. When the treatment was implemented, I had a steady and consistent increasing line of my data that was stable all the way through the designated dates. Each day my goal was achieved, so overall 100%. Although I do not have dips in my graphs like my cohorts, I believe that is due to me having a fiance who was going to school to be a personal trainer and who motivated me throughout this study. I also ran outside on a trail instead of a treadmill, which helped me stay on track and not stray from my goal due to the changes of scenery. Showing in the graph, I was not an avid runner or an active individual, which gave me the idea to set my daily goals to increase by 0.10 of a mile each day. But my first day of treatment began at the minimum goal distance and increased by either 0.10 miles or higher during the treatment phase. When comparing my goal line to the data that was taken across the set dates, I was consistently able to meet and/or exceed my daily goal. The article called Goal Setting as a Strategy for Dietary and Physical Activity Behavior Change supported my data collection and study through comparing an increase in physical activity without goal setting versus implementing goal setting to increase physical activity. A high majority of the studies found that once a goal was set in place, the participants, regardless of age, were successful in meeting that goal and stayed focused on their physical activity, just like our replication study shown above. At the beginning of treatment, my distance was 0.10 of a mile, and my distance on the final day of data collection for treatment was 2 miles. It is evident that my distance increased steadily due to the intervention of goal setting and receiving constructive criticism and peer feedback on a weekly basis.
This is Morgan, and I was participant number 5, meaning I was the last participant to begin the intervention in our multiple baseline design. At the start of the data collection, my running behavior was stable at 0 for the entire baseline. For my intervention, I chose a higher daily goal than other participants to increase 0.25 miles per day. This decision was based on the knowledge that my intervention time was shorter than other participants, so my long-term running goal at the end of the intervention would be 3 miles, which I felt was attainable. I met my goal on the 28th day. You can see once intervention was implemented, there was an immediate increase in running behavior, and it continues at a stable increase in trend line. There were 2 days I did not run at all, then the following day I engaged in the running behavior, but only to reach the goal of the previous day that I had not made. So for example, as you see on the 19th day, my goal was 0.5, but I did not make this goal. So on the 20th day, I ran to reach that unmet goal before increasing the goal the following day. In the intervention phase, my average was 1.5 miles and the range was 0 to 3.25 miles. I met my goal 9 out of 13 days, which is 70%. A change in my running behavior is clear immediately at the onset of the intervention, and you can see that the goal setting and weekly feedback was an effective intervention for me. Overall, you can see through each of the participants' graph that there is a functional relationship demonstrated between the independent and dependent variables. While looking at all 5 of the graphs, during baseline, the averages are consistently around 0 to 0.4 miles, and each were stable before implementing the intervention. So that means for each participant it was appropriate to change the next phase. Once the intervention was put in place, the averages rose to around a half mile plus more for some participants. After looking at the data we obtained, we can conclude that feedback and goal setting can increase running distances. There were some days that some of the participants did not run or met their goals. However, each participant had a consistent increase in their trend lines, and most people showed a stable increase as well. With this evidence and these graphs, they show that the intervention of receiving feedback and setting goals for ourselves had an effect on our running. For potential research, we thought that it would be interesting to see how long this pattern would continue with continued intervention. Once the participants in the study started reaching 3, 4, 10 miles, would the stable accelerating trend in the intervention phase stay, or would they eventually have a steady flow top off? Both of our studies were very similar. All of the participants in the studies increased their distances. Also, there was a clear functional relationship between the intervention and the targeted behavior, as evidenced by the increasing trend lines after the intervention was completed. The studies demonstrated the effectiveness of goal setting and feedback has on improving running distances for participants.
The overall goal of this exercise study was to determine if goal setting would be effective enough to increase running distance over time. From analyzing the data, the results showed that implementing and putting a goal in place increased the running distance over time, with all participants meeting their running distance goal. Although there were days where short-term goals were not met, the long-term goal and most important goal was achieved at the end of data collection. Our data provided more research supporting the goal setting, and feedback is an effective intervention for increasing running distance. There were 3 strengths of the study: simple usage of the Map My Walk app, multiple baseline design that gave more data and detail for baseline graphs, and the simple treatment fidelity agreement made the study replication run smoothly. The simple usage of the Map My Walk app gave simplicity to data collection and gave flexibility to different times of the day that the participants ran. The multiple baseline design gave deeper insight into the details of the baseline and gave a better numerical standpoint in checking how goal setting increases exercise over time. The simple treatment fidelity agreement was a word-of-mouth agreement exchanged between all members of the study replication to follow through with the goals that were set in place. Having said it aloud to all members gave each member a sense of responsibility to make sure they held up their end of the bargain.
So one of the limitations of this replication study was the manual recording of the results in the Map My Walk app. Since all but one participant exclusively entered running data manually, the self-reporting data honesty is a factor that could have contributed to the results. Remembering to start the tracking feature on the application before starting to run could have ended in inaccurate results also. Each member had a different daily goal, some increasing by 0.05 miles and some increasing by larger increments, such as 0.25 miles. The difference in the daily goals could have been a factor in whether or not goals were met. At the beginning of the study, none of the members were runners, which means that if each member only ran one time during the intervention, their running distance would have increased. Since the purpose of the study was to increase running distance, it would be hard to determine if goal setting and feedback was the main contributing factor to the increase. All but one participant ran during the baseline phase, which likely would not have happened if it hadn't been for replicating the study. During the feedback portion of this replication study, members met weekly to discuss goals and praise each other for meeting those goals. Not all members were present for each one of those meetings, which meant that they did not receive feedback and discuss their goals for that week. Also, some participants received feedback and encouragement from people outside of the study, such as family, friends, and coworkers. And although feedback was a part of the study, it's hard to determine if feedback from closer peers, such as family and friends, had a stronger effect on meeting the running goals. There were days when participants did not run at all due to personal factors such as illness, work schedule, making it to the gym during business hours, and weather conditions. A limitation of the replication would be that the original study had a second intervention method because the initial intervention was too difficult for participants to meet. Our group did not need to transition to that second intervention during our replication. Also, the original study used a different application for tracking running distance. All the results for our replication are consistent with the idea that goal setting and feedback do have an effect on increasing running distance. These limitations may have had an influence on our results. Okay, that's it.